Hello and welcome to the Nonsense Rumble!
That's right. Today's category is a bit of a fun one. We are doing Tactician. Do you want to explain for the guys and girls watching what the fuck that means?
Yeah, we're taking a tactician from, well, mostly from fiction, but the real world is there too if you like, and we're giving them a standardized army. So if you're from, I don't know, Battlestar Galactica, you don't have an army of Cylons. You've got the same army that your opponent has.
Yeah, because you'd be automatically gimping yourself if you didn't pick a sci-fi thing, because as much as you might like ancient era commanders, they're not going to win against an army of Ubermenches from the Star Wars universe.
Yep. You're not going to have the Emperor just win. But yes, with that said, do you have any honourable mentions for me today?
I do indeed have an honourable mention. My honourable mention is Tywin Lannister from A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, so I'm not as big up on the Game of Thrones verse lore. How good of a guy is he?
As a commander, he is quite frankly excellent. Here's the thing, is the times he loses are when he underestimates his opponents, which, if Tywin's quite an old guy, I believe he's in his 50s easily. Anyone who's significantly younger than him, such as Robb Stark, who he clashes with a lot in the earlier novels, he severely underestimates because he's basically a kid, and he gets his arse whipped in several battles because of it, because he just doesn't think that he can be beaten by this kid. I also picked Tywin because unlike he's got the same level of intellect when it comes to the battlefield as Tyrion Lannister, except he is far more ruthless with it.
Yeah.
Which is something to be commended in a tactician, but not too much. So yeah, I think he'd be a pretty good pick, but he does have his flaws, which everyone does tend to have flaws, but that's a pretty big one. If you picked someone who was... Basically, if Tywin doesn't know you, there's a 50-50 shot that he just fucking loses.
Yeah.
That being said, do you have an honourable mention yourself?
My honourable mention is the one that you thought I might pick. It's Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Oh, cool. I'm so glad I didn't counterpick.
Yeah, because I've read the Thrawn books. I know how he gets beaten, and it's by someone who was his contemporary, and he just gets outmaneuvered and outplayed, and he just gets counterpicked pretty hard, and the good guys win. Now that we have the new universe, we don't know how it's going to end.
Okay, so it's interesting how we both said honourable mentions for pretty much the same reason. There is a core tenet in the art of war. Know yourself like you know your enemy, and you need not risk loss in a single battle. It's pretty much something every tactician knows. It's you need to know your enemy, and you need to know yourself, and that means you'll never lose. If you only have 50% of the information, there's a 50-50 chance you lose. If you don't know yourself or your enemy, you're fucked. And most people kind of stumble at that because a lot of people don't seem to realise that they have habits and they have general things that they do, which means if you don't know you do those general things but your enemy does, you're going to get fucked.
Yeah. So he... I think his biggest flaw is normally the assumptions of things that he has are static. Like he doesn't even consider that Rook, for instance, is going to betray him, and that's how he gets killed. And that was like a big gambit pile up from Leia of all people, freeing the entire race of assassins that he was taking control of. Mm-hmm. And as a commander, he was outmaneuvered by General Beliblis, who didn't like Mon Mothma. And that's why he wasn't a rebel commander. Okay. He thought Mon Mothma wanted to become the new emperor.
Well, to be fair, from someone looking out, from someone outwards looking in and not knowing the ins and outs, I could see why someone might have that assumption.
Yeah, and it took basically 3 books to convince him that no, she wasn't. But yeah, because Thrawn is not invincible, he's the one that I've not picked. So, who's going to be your real pick for today?
My real pick today is Zhuge Liang, Zhuge Kong Ming, but specifically Koei's Romance of the Three Kingdoms strategy sim games pedestaled version of Zhuge Liang.
So not Waver.
Oh, fuck no, he's shit. I was so disappointed when it's like Zhuge Liang's in Fate. It's just fucking Waver.
Yeah. So I got him as Zhuge Liang, and someone said, "Oh, you got Waver." I'm like, "No, he's a caster."
But yeah, there's plenty of reasons to pick Zhuge Liang. Some of them I'm sure you're already aware of, but the fact that he's even elevated to bigger and badder heights by Koei's fucking hard-on for him just makes him nigh on unbeatable when it comes to strategy and coming up with tactics. That being said, I'm eager to see who you picked.
I'm going with Commander Farsight.
He's Tau from Warhammer 40k.
Yeah, he's the Tau commander who was too much of a renegade for the main Tau fleet. and he has his own little mini faction that are essentially exiles from the Tau. And I think what's interesting about him is that the Tau in particular are essentially newcomers to the 40k verse, even though they're maybe 25 years old at this point.
Yeah, no, in canon, you mean?
In canon, they're essentially newcomers. Even 1,000 years of newcomer is newcomer in the 41st millennium. And they adapted very quickly to the ins and outs of the far future, in which there is only war. But Farsight in particular adapted to the Space Marines almost immediately, because Gulliman wrote the Space Marine Codex. It was standard Space Marine practice to do standard Space Marine things. He deduced this after about 2 battles and started immediately, instantly, and methodically and reliably countering Space Marines at every turn. And that's a big deal for a faction that is essentially punching up.
Well, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because the reason Chaos can't do that because they're far too disorganized, and Orcs sure as fuck ain't going to do that. They want the fight to last as long as possible.
Yeah. So I think based entirely on the fact that his faction is always punching up, especially after being an exile and being his own little mini faction, he's always dealing with less than he would like against more than he would like to deal with. And I think that's what pushes him into like legendary commander status.
Commander, but not necessarily tactician.
Well, yeah, tactician. I didn't know whether we were going to include them as a unit within the fight. I'm assuming not, because the whole point is you have your standardized army.
Well, yeah, definitely not, because otherwise I would have gone for Lu Meng.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's one of those where the only time Zhuge Liang was on a battlefield was specifically to boost morale.
Sure.
Because even he understood that he was not a fighter. He was all about strategizing and leading the battlefield. But if you can't see your leader on the battlefield, it's pretty fucking demoralizing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's one of those interesting ones where if we're assuming neither commander has any prior knowledge of the other one, and they've got 2 identical armies, it's basically going to be whoever can come up with plans and strategies on the fly.
Yeah.
Now, again, the reason why I specify the Romance of the Three Kingdoms video game series by Koei version of Zhuge Liang is because I think everyone, even people who don't know anything about the Three Kingdoms era, has heard of Zhuge Liang / Kong Ming.
Yeah, I mean, it took until I got him in Fate, but yes.
It's one of those, like, he's up there with Guan Yu.
Yes.
And maybe Lu Bu. He, this was thanks to the fact that the Three Kingdoms novel was basically written by the Shu sympathizers' point of view, so everyone in Shu was automatically already miles above everyone else. They were the side punching up. The only reason Shu lasted as long as they did is because Zhuge Liang could foresee how things were going to go, and therefore made plans accordingly. He's credited with so many interesting stratagems, including the empty castle stratagem, which is just silly. I love it. It probably didn't happen, but it's still cool, where the Wei forces, they were coming in force, and Zhuge Liang did not have enough troops to defend the place he had. So he sent all his troops back to a different region, and just stayed in the castle on his own, had all the gates open, and was playing his instrument from the castle top, and the enemy tactician was just like, oh, this is such a fucking trap, let's not do this today. And they went back home.
Oh man, that's adorable.
But, you know, he summoned the winds during Chibi. He managed to make the wind blow the correct direction, so the fire would spread correctly. In reality, he just knew how to read certain patterns to know what the weather would be like, and was like, I need 3 days to do this. And he set up a fucking ritual, and it's like the wind would change direction. And it changed direction, but not because of anything magic bullshit. He just knew the weather was going to change that day.
Yeah.
But obviously in video games, no, he's magic, bro.
Yeah. Wind magic and all that.
So what I'm trying to say is, I really like your pick. I think Zhuge Liang's better.
Yeah. Because Farsight, even though he's punching up, I think he's assuming he knows his troops a lot better than he would be able to command a standardized army, I think.
I mean, here's what I'm getting from what you're throwing down with Farsight is, I think he's very good in the scenario he's got. I don't think he can adapt to different rule originals.
Yeah, like he might win the second, third, and fourth combat, but the first one, yeah, I think Zhuge Liang's got it.
You know what? I think he might win the second one, and then if Zhuge Liang got pushed back in the second one, he'd be like, okay, I'm actually fighting a tactician that knows what they're doing, which means I now have to change my tactics.
Yeah, they just counterpick each other all the time.
Like, I think Zhuge Liang would win the first one because he could adapt more on the fly, and I think if there was a second encounter somehow because they decided to, that's when Farsight, I almost said Shadow Sun.
Yeah, different commander.
Completely fucking different. Farsight would be able to adapt and be like, okay, this is what they do. But then, because he's used to fighting people who only ever stick to one strategy, he'd then be completely taken off guard when it's like, oh, they're countering us? Okay, we've got to change tactic.
Yeah, totally.
Because as you say, Space Marines are so zealous in following their codex.
Yeah. Like, you need to be specifically a mutant chapter, as it were, to do something different to the way that the Ultramarines do things. Like, even the Imperial Fists are, like, mostly Ultramarine in what they do, plus sieges.
Pretty much, and even then, they're not good at either.
Don't tell that to Rogel Dawn, you'll hurt his one feeling, which is siege.
Rogel Dawn's got nothing to do with the Imperial Fists.
Rogel Dawn is the Imperial Fist.
I'm dumb. Okay, do you know what I did?
You thinking of Ferrus Manus, were you?
I was thinking of Crimson Fists.
Oh, Crimson Fists.
Yeah, sorry.
They're also a sub chapter of Imperial Fists.
Yeah, I know.
Even though they're blue.
But I completely fucked up. My bad.
No worries.
Anyway, we all know White Scars are cool.
Fart.
They're motorbikes.
Oh yes. Yeah, the White Scars. Yeah, man.
Why do they use motorbikes and hit one tactics? Because their fucking leader's called Jagati Khan and Games Workshop is unimaginative.
Yeah, and they didn't want to make horses for Space Marines.
They wouldn't have
The poor horse.
Oh.
The horse would snap.
I mean, you say that, but the Mechanicus exist. They make a robot horse for robot people.
yeah. Robors.
But yeah, of course.
But yes.
Of course, I'm going to say it, but I'm championing Zhuge Liang winning this fight.
Yeah, I'll bow down to that one. Yep, Zhuge Liang wins. Join us again next time.